Hello, friends. I had a question from a friend about how to hem his jeans, and also my niece wanted to know how to do invisible hemming, and I thought, why not kill two birds with one video? So for this, I don't wear jeans, so I can't give you a proper tutorial on that, but I have some fabric that will be equally difficult and irritating to hand sew through. And given that it is difficult and irritating to hand sew, you're going to want a thimble. Your thimble should fit nicely and snugly on the end of your middle finger on your dominant hand, and you shouldn't be too worried about it falling off, but it also shouldn't hurt you. I use two different sizes depending on whether my finger is a little bit swollen that day with humidity. Decent scissors, a sharp needle for once. I normally only use sharps when I'm sewing as opposed to when I'm embroidering, as well as reasonably decent thread. This is the thing when you are hemming something that gets a lot of use. Don't use crap thread. Use something decent that Gutermann will do just for this. So the important part for hemming the length of a garment is you want to give yourself enough of extra length to be able to fold it over and then fold it again to the size of hem that you want. So an extra ½ to inch, maybe1.5 for something really heavy. Basically, before you cut it, fold over the end, see how much you want, measure it, and then cut to the finished length plus your fold over. It is irritating to do this on jeans because they are finished in a circle and also tend to have a shape. So don't be too put off by the fact that your fold over will have a couple of little wrinkles in it. If you have a really heavy material, you may want to press it, or you might even want to take a hammer to it, hammer that crease flat so that it'll be a little easier. My friend doesn't have a sewing machine, so we're doing this by hand. So typically, I'm going to, here we are. I've just pressed this, and I'm also not being especially fussy because clearly this is just a practice piece. I like to take a little back stitch just to make sure that I'm secure here because I don't depend on the knot to not break. Also, I didn't mention this because I pre-threaded this needle, but you don't want more than twice the length of your forearm with sewing thread because you don't want to have to be pulling forever and always to try to get your thread through. I don't double it quite the full length, and also I will be holding the needle between my thumb and index finger just above the eye so that my middle finger can support the eye, and then I tend to grab the rest of the thread, partly to keep it tidy and also so that I'm not pulling on the needle and pulling the thread here to weaken it. It's a trick from embroidery. So I'll pull the needle or pull the thread from the thread rather than from the needle. So we're going to start with how would I do this for jeans, which means I'm actually going to be looking at the opposite side of it and therefore taking out these pins because they're going to annoy me. Okay. Because I want to be able to bend this better. Okay. So we're going to do a back stitch. Of course. Took out the pins in exactly the wrong spot. That's fine. And so assuming that I can go through both layers at once will make my life easier. I'm going to go back away from the way that I've come and then come up further along this line. And back. If you want a full solid line, you do smaller stitches, and then you can match them up perfectly. If you're not too fussed about that, baby stop, sorry, cat interference, then you can just do them not so close together. Ideally, you would use a thread that is matching the color of your fabric so that it doesn't show. I want these stitches to show so that you guys can see them. Also, as I'm angling this, what I'm trying to do is angle through so that I actually don't catch as much as you might think of the back fabric on my needle. And so this is precisely the reason why you would do this with a scoop sewing stitch if you can, which is made an awful lot easier by this thimble. Because, so here's a sewing back stitch. It's going to angle through the layers. Let's just see here. Angle through the layers so that it's further along on the back than it is on the front, and then angle back up through the layers so it doesn't catch a lot on the back. However, when I'm doing this, I do need to be careful to feel with my other finger to make sure I do catch any on the back, because otherwise I could do this beautiful back stitch and not catch any of my material and then not do a good hem. So I'll take that pin out for now. And the other option that I have is to do slightly smaller stitches so that I can have them more or less butting up against each other and more closely mimic a machine back stitch. These are really not very tidy, and that's fine. Also, if this is really thick material, I'm having a really hard time, then I'm just going to have to stab it through. And that will be slow and precise, and I will end up with more thread on the back side. So let's have a look at that. There, we do end up with a bit more thread on the back side because we can't just scoop. So there's a quick review of back stitch as you might use it for hemming. It does make a nice sturdy line if you have them connect. If you're not overly concerned about that, you don't have to be super careful because jeans, no one's looking at the bottom. However, let's pretend for a moment that these are my Goodwill trousers. And this is where if I were any further along in finishing the dress I'm supposed to be working on, then I would show you on that piece. But what happens if I want to hem something and not have it show? A couple of options. One is to use a, oh, come on. My brain is skipping this, so I'll just add it in later. It's a type of basting stitch. Applique stitch. There's another name for it. So where I just grab a couple of threads of the top and then I can go through my fold over. It's a whip stitch. That's what it is. These are all correct names for this thing. It's an applique stitch if you're appliquing something in embroidery, and it's a whip stitch in hand sewing. A whip stitch in embroidery, by the way, is something different, so that's why I don't always remember it. And so that's relatively quick and lets me come along, just scoop a couple of threads, which is really nice when you have a heavy twill. This is not a twill, but it is a brocade weave, which doesn't always show on the front, so you won't see any of these stitches on the front. A twill, like a jeans fabric, will have that same thing where you can just grab a couple of threads from your facing material and then go through the fold over here and not have it show even when I'm using a thread that really contrasts. Another option, which is what I used to do before because I really liked whip stitch for a good long time, and is sort of doubly invisible, is to basically do a modified backstitch. And you have to be really careful with this so that you only catch the threads on the back of that facing piece and not go through. And So I'm feeling that with my finger. It's really hard to show, but you can feel it when you do it. So just fold that over again a little more. Maybe more pins would have been useful. And because this is a variation of a back stitch, you'll notice I'm taking a little tiny back stitch each time. And feeling that. Check in every once in a while. This is an awful lot sturdier than the whip stitch version, because if any one of these break, it will just fall apart. Whereas this, those little backwards turns on the back stitch help to anchor it a little bit more. So this becomes an awful lot sturdier of a hem. And if you want an invisible hem that's going to be able to hold up a little better, this is the one that I like. However, if you want something relatively quick and is just going to finish your hems or your seams, there is nothing quite like a whip stitch. And I'm pretty lazy about my whip stitches. It's what I use to finish most of my hand seams. So both of those give me an invisible hem on the front versus our nice visible back stitch from the beginning that we might want to use for, heavier jeans. So hopefully that'll answer your questions. Have a good day and happy stitching.